And welcome back to the 66th episode of the Monster Movie Stompdown. Of course, you got your host, Sludge, here. My co-host across from me
is Mark,
our brother from Texas.
Ruben.
And we are here for the final, not the technical final, but the final as far as the run we're doing, the final Universal horror movie. And we saved the best for first. Or in this case, the worst for
last. Yeah, we did the best first.
Yeah. But we've got The Invisible Man coming up for you, and it's going to be fun, actually. Even though we got our choice opinions on this movie. There's some cool things about it, but we've got some cool stuff in store coming up, and the next couple episodes, but we're going to talk about and see what to do next because we're ending this series. You know, we've had a few people ask about like sequels or remakes to these films, so we've gotten pretty good feedback actually through the Universal Monster Movies run we've been doing from a lot of friends and listeners. So we may toe back around to the Universals because every one of these movies had a slew of sequels, and of course. Every one of them had a remake at some point, or at least a major remake. Obviously, like Hammer films came out and did the Frankenstein movies and Wolfman movies and Dracula movies, but like true to the name remake, every one of these has had one. Dracula with Bram Stoker's, Mary Shelley's Frankenstein to Frankenstein, the Brendan Fraser Mummy to the Mummy. Invisible Man just had one a couple years ago. Wolfman had one with Benicio del Toro and Anthony Hopkins, which I went back and watched the other day because I haven't watched it in forever.
But did the Creature have one?
Well, no, except the Creature. You're right. They have been trying forever. Now, technically, you can say
no. There ain't no technicals.
Well,
no.
I
know where he's going.
Yeah, but
I know where he's going.
Del Toro fought tooth and nail trying to do one because he's wanted to do one forever, and just it never got off the ground. So he finally said, "Okay, screw you guys." Like Hartman, like screw you guys, I'm going home. Like he just went off and made his own, and that was The Shape of Water. While is drastically,
all he did was instead of doing the remake, he just changed the dress code. If you know what I mean.
Yeah, that's pretty much it. Just changed the dress code.
That's what he did.
Yep, that is
they wouldn't let him do it. They wouldn't let him do it. So he goes, "Oh, fine, I'll just change the dress code then." And he did Shape of Water.
And man, that movie is just brilliant and freaking beautiful. Yes, not a true Creature remake, but that's the closest we got. So, but no, Rob Zombie wanted to do a Creature from Black Lagoon remake, which I'm very hit or miss when it comes to his films. Like he's doing Monsters. Like he's making a movie for Monsters now. Yeah. I'm very interested to see how that turns out. You know what I mean? Because like, you got to have that comedy aspect to Monsters, and I'm like hoping he doesn't go like super dark comedy. Like I hope he keeps it pure to the heart of the show. Because
he is a purist. I mean, as far as that stuff. So, some of his horror stuff wasn't as I don't know. It was good, but I just wasn't my cup of tea, and I think he went too far with some of those horror movies he made, but they were great. So I'm thinking, I'm holding out hope that he sees the Monsters and he doesn't go all Emmerich on it.
Yeah, I'm hoping so too. Yeah. I mean, he was attached to do Creature at one point, and now I'm pretty sure I would have dug the crap out of a Rob Zombie Creature from Black Lagoon movie. Like that would have been a terrifying movie, in my opinion. I mean, I would have loved to see Del Toro.
I think he'd have went really, really dark.
Like, I mean, if Del Toro did a Creature from Black Lagoon, it would absolutely be amazing. Don't get me wrong. And I think Del Toro's a better filmmaker than Rob, but I think Creature from Black Lagoon would have been a better movie because he would have just got it. You know what I mean? Yeah. He would have just got the nightmare it should have been, and I think that would have been absolutely stellar. So
that would have been good.
Yeah. So I mean. Maybe one day there'll be one. So, and maybe we'll go back through and do the remakes and how they compare to the originals would be cool. But we're going to throw a couple off the wall things in on you, get something figured out. But Invisible Man, I'm pumped about this one. if y'all can tell. So,
pumped that it's over.
Exactly. So we're going to jump into this one. But before we do, got another commercial for you because we talked about it last time, and I'll quit saying this in probably the next show. Just start dropping the commercials for you guys. But we want to support our friends and help spread the love. It was super cool. Charlie and Dan they just dropped Con Air on their newest episode, and y'all need to listen to that because who doesn't love Con Air? Like, one, who doesn't love Nicolas Cage? And two, who doesn't love Con Air? Like, the movie's amazing. Every actor was spot on in that movie. But they ran our commercial. They ran Pete's commercial, Good Big Bad Movie Night. So it's really cool that this is kind of kicking off, supporting our friends and other shows in the groups that we've got. So I want to push next, actually, a commercial for a show called The Jacked Up Review Show by Cameron Sullivan. It's a pretty cool show. I would probably say the ones we talk about, our little crew, Good Big Bad Movie Night, Give Me Back My Action Movies, us. Cameron's show is probably the I wouldn't say the oddball out, but it's definitely the most different. Like, he constantly has special guests come onto the show, and they talk about, different actors' careers, different cult classic movies, pro wrestlers, kind of a little bit across the board. It's all pop culture movie centered, but his show is really, really cool, very informative show, worth checking out. So want to run a commercial for you guys for that one. Drop the trailer from The Invisible Man, and we'll be back here in just a moment.
Give a what you think you are entitled to.
Hey, I'm entitled to see movies that don't suck.
Never tell anybody outside the family what you're thinking of getting.
I was not expecting that.
After you've scrubbed all the floors in Hyrule, then we can talk about mercy. Take him away.
No!
You are going to die.
Enough. My ship sails in the morning. I wonder what's for dinner.
It's a jacked up review show. It's a jacked up review show. Jacked up review show. It's a jacked up review show.
Join your host Cam Sully each week as he chats with special guests to discuss many an insane movie and numerous cult TV phenomenons.
Listener discretion is advised. It's a jacked up review show. It's a jacked up review show. Jacked up review show.
Bandages right up to the top of his head, all round his ears.
Laura's worried about Griffin.
I had a terrible feeling last night. I felt he was in desperate trouble.
He meddled in things men should leave alone. Not the slightest clue. That's where the clues are. He wasn't leaving anything to chance. There must be a way back. God knows there's a way back. I need help! If only you'd leave me alone.
It's the stranger with the goggles. He's gone mad.
You're crazy to know who I am, aren't you? All right, I'll show you. The India madness, you're peering through the keyholes and gaping through the curtains. And now you'll suffer for it. But why? Why do it, Griffin? Just a scientific experiment at first, to do something no other man in the world had done. Suddenly I realized the power I held, the power to rule, to make the world grovel at my feet. You know who the Invisible Man is, Doctor. Where is Dr. Griffin? What's the good of concealing it?
Oh, come and stay with us. Let's fight this thing out together.
Police, quickly. The Invisible Man is in my house. He's mad. He's killed a man tonight. Believe me, as surely as the moon will set and the sun will rise, I shall kill you tomorrow night. The secret of invisibility lies there in my books. Don't you see what it means? Power. Power to walk into the gold vaults of the nations, into the secrets of kings, into the Holy of Holies. Power to make multitudes run squealing in terror at the touch of my little invisible finger. Even the moon's frightened of me. The whole world's frightened to death. I'll lay traps that even an invisible man can't pass. Radio stations now. Watch the wall. Help! Help! He's here! He's here! me on a cold and frosty morning. Whoops!
All right, and it's time to drop the synopsis of The Invisible Man, which I don't know. I mean, Invisible Man was an H.G. Wells book. I mean, if those listening don't know who H.G. Wells is, I don't know why you listen to this show. You
Yeah.
you ever heard of War of the Worlds?
It should be a prerequisite to watching this show.
It's a requirement. It's like, from going from kindergarten to before you go to first grade, you got to know at least how to finger paint. So in this one, you got to know H.G. Wells' name.
At the very least, you should know you should know the story of the War of the Worlds and the radio broadcast.
Oh, yeah.
I mean,
everybody
knows about that.
Oh, yeah.
If you don't know H.G. Wells,
yes, man.
Yeah,
the night,
it's
crazy with The Night That Panicked America. Of course, being on H.G. Wells' War of the Worlds. My great grandmother lived through that, and would told me about that. How they were listening live on the radio as it was going on, and there was mass panic in the streets, which was just super, super cool.
And I believe at the time she was in New Jersey.
Yeah, she was in New Jersey. She was near the area where all that stuff was going down.
Yeah.
So which is nuts.
That's amazing.
Oh yeah, it was so cool.
Yeah.
So, and those who don't know, The Night That Panicked America was Orson had gone on and did a live, almost full acting, just full radio show of the War of the Worlds.
Right.
But there was no, hey, we're doing this. There was no prerequisite or pronouncement.
They just did
They
it.
just dropped it and terrified the East Coast, man. East Coast went into full panic mode thinking we were being attacked by Martians. But so anyways, yes, H.G. Wells. The Invisible Man is about Dr. Jack Griffin, a scientist, a chemist who comes across and makes a formula that turns him invisible. He works underneath Dr. Cranley. His love interest is a woman named Flora. Partner's a guy named Dr. Kemp, and it's pretty much he uses a mixture of chemicals that turns him invisible. And one of the chemicals he uses is actually known to cause primates and other test subjects to go mentally insane. So as he becomes invisible, working on an antidote to get back to not being invisible, his mind slips quickly and he becomes more insane to develop to where instead of trying to save himself, he now wants to take over and dominate the world. And it's up to Flora and it's up to Kemp and Dr. Cranley to stop him. And of course, at the end, they do finally prevail after he's killed Kemp, actually, because he comes back to him and wants to partner with him to take over the world. And Kemp is terrified and he ends up killing him. Actually tells him, I'm gonna kill you tomorrow, 10 o'clock on the dot, but they, he ends up killing Kemp, but the police end up devising a way because he outsmarts them every turn he outsmarts them, but he ends up getting killed by the police outside of a barn that he's resting in, taking, sleeping and warmth. The farmer finds him. They trap him inside, light the barn on fire, and as he runs out, they catch his feet in the snow, and they're able to shoot him and end up killing him. And as he is dying on the hospital bed, as he dies, his skin turns back to normal, and you see him laying there. Pretty quick synopsis for those who've read the book. The movie's pretty much the same. There's quite a bit taken out from the movie, but the movie's a streamlined version of that. As soon as the movie opens up, we see Dr. Griffin in a snowstorm walking into a tavern and asks for a room, and he starts working on experiments up in the room trying to find an antidote. Of course, he's pretty brash and rude to everybody, and they're like, well, we're going to kick him out. So they decide to kick him out, and he just flips lid. The first time you see that he's finally starting to go mad after Dr. Cranley and Kemp talk about the chemicals he was working with, this one chemical causing people to go crazy who's used it. You see him go crazy.
Monocaine.
Yeah, monocaine's what it is.
Yeah, there you go.
Yep. And he flips lid and takes the bandages off, and they realize he's invisible, and he just starts going crazy at that point, from then on out, and then makes his way back to Dr. Kemp and to partner up with him to take over the world. And he uses Kemp to go back and get the notes and trying to help him, and he starts a killing spree. And the whole time Flora, who realizes what's going on, is still like, we can save him, we have to save him. And even though they try, and there's a scene with the two of them where he's like, I did this for you, his madness is still there. and then eventually it boils down to they end up having to kill him and kill him successfully. Not, long after the death of Dr. Kemp, because they try to save Dr. Kemp, but it doesn't work because Griffin's too smart. So, but this movie came out in 1933. Universal, me and Mark were talking about this earlier. Mark can allude to this more than I could. I mean, I know Universal was struggling at the point of bankruptcy, or maybe even file bankruptcy. No, at the point of bankruptcy, late 1932 and into 33. And so they were trying to bounce back. Well, they bought the rights for The Invisible Man from H.G. Wells for like $10,000. They made the movie for a little under $300,000. It did decent. I mean, it made the money back at the box office. It wasn't as huge as, Wolfman or Frankenstein or things like that, but it was still enough of a success to help them float, to getting things back in running order. For the company. The movie was directed by James Wales. Of course, this is another Carl Laemmle film. He's producer, and his son Carl Laemmle Jr. is also a producer of this film. James Wales, of course, directed the movie. He brought in Claude Raines, which I didn't know this. Mark said this earlier. This was actually a Boris Karloff originally who they wanted to play Jack Griffin, but couldn't get him, and they brought Claude Raines in to play Dr. Griffin. And then, of course, another familiar face that you guys will see if you watch the movie is Henry Travers from It's a Wonderful Life, is Dr. Cranley. Gloria Stewart, who was a pretty big actress back then, she plays Flora. William Harrigan plays Dr. Kemp. And then there's an awesome cameo in this one, as you all have definitely heard my love for the great Dwight Fry, who was, if you don't remember, Renfield and Dracula. He was Franz and Frankenstein. He has a cameo, and I think this may be the first cameo like for a movie ever. Like we always see cameos happening, and with all the Universal monsters, they just kind of threw Dwight in there for a quick scene. He's a reporter where they're questioning the police and on what to do. You know what I mean? Like, how are we going to catch him? And Dwight's got a cool little scene there. And that was the highlight for me in this movie. I was like, Dwight Fry. Because, I mean, I was waiting for the Renfield.
I think I heard him all the way over at my house.
Dude, I was so pumped. So
when I was when watching it, I'm like, well, I already know what the highlight's going to be. Sludge.
Well, and there's a couple other ones too, like Walter Brennan is in this. He's the guy the bicycle stolen from.
Yeah.
John Carradine's in this. Yep. He's like one of the Cockney informers or something like that. So I mean, there's a cool that, and of course now this was like small role beginning career type deal for those guys, but some cool little cameos in this one. And of course the movie went on. It was considered a success, and it did of course go on to spawned several sequels like most of these. The Invisible Man did, The Invisible Man Returns in 1940. Same year, Invisible Woman. Then like 2 or 3 years later, we got The Invisible Agent. A few years later, Invisible Man's Revenge. The only one that I absolutely love in those is Invisible Agent because it's just freaking off the wall, bat crazy. for that movie, it was just nuts. But let's jump into it, man. What we thought about The Invisible Man. Who is excited to go first on this amazing film? Mark's looking the other way. Ruben, I think,
I'll go.
Well, I was waiting to hear a pin drop. It's gonna go real quiet, real quick.
Ruben's got a video game in his hand or something. I'm not gonna tell. He's like, whoa. Go for it, Ruben.
I'll go. Well, to me, as far as Universal monsters go, this is the low point for me. That's Universal monsters. Although it's kind of unfair. I was actually looking up the chronological order of the Universal monsters, and The Invisible Man came out. It was Dracula, Frankenstein, Murder in the Rue Morgue, The Mummy, Island of Lost Souls, and then The Invisible Man.
Yeah.
So the
came out before Wolfman and Creature.
Came out before Wolfman, before Creature. Universal basically was just, I would say, getting their feet planted solid as a monster studio. I guess that's the best thing. So when I looked at that, I said, it's kind of unfair to compare it to Wolfman or to anything. But at the same time, they put out Frankenstein and Dracula, two of the best movie, no matter what you say. So it's kind of hard to be compared to those two. So that's why, to me, it's the low point of the Universal monsters. But I don't know if it's necessarily the fault of the movie. It came out in 1933. The special effects were ahead of its time, if you ask me, because okay, Wolfman haven't come out yet, so that special effects hadn't happened yet.
Yeah.
And
And we're talking about turning a guy invisible in 1933.
Yeah. So and I was reading how they did that, how they had to, do the black velvet, cover them up in black velvet, and then superimpose them into the other, into the movie scene, and then they had to do all kinds of stuff by hand with that film. So I'm going to give the special effects. That's the high point of that movie is the special effects. I think they were great for 1933.
Oh yeah. Yeah. Well, even like little things like the books being thrown off, or the scene where he's throwing the glasses across the room.
Oh yeah.
Special effects are great in this.
Yeah. And of course, Claude Raines, you only see him once at the end of the movie when he's dead.
Yeah.
That's it. The rest of the time, you had to rely on his voice acting, kind of like, Pixar nowadays.
Yeah.
So his acting,
he's bandaged head to toe, covered in bandages,
bandaged head to toe. So everything with Claude Raines had to be through his voice. So that part too is his acting was great in it. Okay, his acting was great. I thought that you didn't see him, but you knew he was a madman just by the way he was talking.
Oh yeah,
you could
definitely hear
voice inflections. Yeah, his voice inflections and all that. And on top of that, the actors that had to act with him, the ones that were choked out, they all had to be excellent actors to be able to do that, to make it believable that there's an invisible man choking them.
Yeah.
So to me, the acting was top notch. It was top notch. The special effects was top notch. But no offense to H.G. Wells, but the story just wasn't it didn't pull me in like other Universal monster movies did. And I don't know if I would consider him a Universal monster, really. I mean, he was a madman. Karloff was a monster because he was made from other body parts. Dracula was a vampire.
Yeah.
The Mummy, was the Mummy.
Right.
He was, yeah. So this was the first time that, let's see here. There was murders in the Rue Morgue and the Island of Lost Souls. But this was this is often included in Universal Monsters, but he's not really in a monster in my book. He belongs more with like the Black Cat, stuff like that.
Yeah.
Those type of movies. That's the category the Invisible Man belongs in. And maybe that's why I'm a little tougher on it than I would be, because Black Cat's an excellent movie.
Oh, Black Cat's awesome.
But it's not a Frankenstein. It's not a Wolfman. It's not a Dracula.
Right.
I wouldn't categorize it that way.
It's the human's monster side of
exactly. So, I think that's what brings this movie down is the fact that it's included in the Universal Monsters. Because I'm even looking at the different collections here in the when I brought it up, and it's only included. I mean, one collection came out in the 90s that included all of these movies. The rest leave out like Black Cat and Murders in the Rue Morgue and all that, but they include the Invisible Man.
Yeah,
and I'm like, man, that's not really fair to the Invisible Man. But all in all, it is a good movie. It's just I didn't find the story interesting enough to draw me in. And I love H.G. Wells. I've read I've read The Invisible Man. I've read War of the Worlds when I was a kid. Because H.G. Wells, when I was a kid, H.G. Wells was just something that you were drawn to. Time Machine.
Time Machine.
Yeah,
amazing.
That's amazing. All those, H.G. Wells just wrote some great stuff. So as a kid, in early 70s, that's when I started. I was born in 66, so I didn't know what's going on until the 70s. 67, 68, I was just running around in a diaper or whatever. But
and all you heard about was Cheech and Chong in the 70s. So it was like,
and even that was late 70s.
That's
Cheech
true.
and Chong was when I was already But I remember just being fascinated with anything H.G. Wells did for the longest time. I even remember going through we had a World Book encyclopedia in our house. And I just remember flipping through it just to read about War of the Worlds over and over again. And that's when the first time I heard about, that the radio broadcasts. Read about the radio broadcast, I should say. And I was just intrigued by it. So H.G. Wells, you're drawn to him automatically. And this movie is pretty true to the book. But, man, I tell you what, even when it came to the book, this one is just not one I would pick up and read again. Time Machine, War of the Worlds. I've even read Frankenstein and all that, and they're all worth reading over and over again. I don't think I ever read Invisible Man after reading it for the first time, and that was the end of that. But other than that, I mean, one thing that I did like is the old lady, Jenny. You know,
dude, she can scream.
The screaming lady, and you know, when I'm watching it, I can only think of Bride of Frankenstein, because that's where she makes her. To me, I saw her first in that before I saw her in Invisible Man.
Mm-hmm.
So to me, the order is always mixed up. But actually, this was done way before she did the Bride of Frankenstein. But I think they hired again. We need somebody who can scream. Hey, you know what? I got somebody. She did the Invisible Man, and she did real good on it.
Well, she was on my nerves real quick.
Oh, I know it. She's just and she just starts crying for any little thing. You know, her husband gets thrown down the stairs, and he's fine. He's sitting in a chair. He has a bandage around his head. And somehow she needs to wail about it.
What kills me on that is she starts wailing about it, then turns around to walk away, then comes back to wail some more.
Wail some more, exactly. So whenever you need it, and then there's a comedic scene where he puts on pants and chases her down a road, and she's running down the road screaming, and there's a pair of pants chasing her, which I thought was just hilarious. So there is this one does have a comedic tone to it in some places, especially with her. And, and even with Invisible Man, he puts on the pants, like he's just a big joker. Like, I'm going to go, harass people. Takes off that old man's hat, throws it in the creek, all kinds of stuff, steals a guy's bike just so people can see the bike, riding down the path on its own. So, all in all, I mean, it is worth watching. I enjoyed it enough, but I still have to give it, if I were to rate the Universal Monsters, poor Claude Raines is in the bottom of the list. That's all I got.
Well, man, Mark, you said it right there. I mean, you really did good. In fact, as you're sitting here explaining what you liked about the movie, I kept thinking, wow, my stomp rating was pretty good there. Everything Ruben's saying here, I'm feeling pretty good.
You weren't too well off. You weren't too far off.
But I think you're right. This is hard to. You can't list this to me as a monster movie. I agree. I mean, Dracula, he's got to have blood to survive, human blood, and or blood. And just those monster movies were monster movies. They were actually And you might say, well, he's a madman, so that's sort of a monster. But I think overall, it wasn't. It's a quick movie. Like as soon as you get going into it, it's over. And but I think in the end, the acting was good. And you're right. The special effects at the time, to me, is just phenomenal. They just do an excellent job at it, and especially in a time during the Depression, for everything that's going on in the country. The movie actually itself does pretty good.
Considering it was right in the middle of a depression, you're right.
It makes some money, makes a profit off of it at a time when Universal they were in trouble. They were financially, they had shut down the first part of the year and actually didn't start back up till May, and then started shooting The Invisible Man
in June.
In June. So I mean, they did really good. I think overall it's a decent movie. I just wouldn't consider it a monster movie. And probably the weakest of the original monster movies is what we're doing here. But I think overall it's Claude Raines does good, and I think he does an excellent job with his voice, that the condition that he's in throughout the movie. And I think he does a very, very good job at that. But I think, Ruben, you hit it really, really good, and that's pretty much where I'm at.
Yeah, I mean, for kind of the same with you guys. I mean, it's weakest of the Universal monsters. My biggest thing, though, was while one of my favorite parts was Claude Raines, that he was also one of my hardest things to like about the movie.
Oh, okay.
Because Well, two reasons. One, this was probably one of the latter films of Claude's that I saw, because I mean, before I saw Invisible Man, excuse me, I have already seen Casablanca. I've already seen, the Family Opera remake, which is one of the only two remakes I like of that movie, Family Opera, because I mean, we know it's my favorite. But he plays, the Phantom in the 40s film. Let's see, I'd already seen Greatest Story Ever Told. He plays Herod in that. The Wolfman, obviously he's in the Wolfman.
Yeah.
So I mean, I'd seen all these other movies with Claude Raines, so I'm very familiar with Claude before I finally get around to watching The Invisible Man. I think it may have been like maybe 10, 12 when I remember watching The Invisible Man. And so I already liked Claude, but I'd already seen all these other films of Claude that Claude was in, and his acting is just amazing. I mean, and he does an amazing job in this. But seeing him in those roles, especially as the Phantom or his roles in the Wolfman, he's no stranger, or even Journey to the Center of the Earth. He was in the 60s.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
He played Dr. Irwin. He's no stranger to the sci-fi, the horror type roles. I mean, while Casablanca or The Greatest Story Ever Told is obviously not that, but his portrayal in this, to me, was too comedic at points, with the way he was laughing and the jokes he made.
How would you compare if Karloff would have done it?
Karloff would have been,
because it's not going to be a visible thing,
right?
It's all going to be audio.
I think Karloff would not have portrayed the moments that Claude is the madman. Like, to me, three parts of this movie make it as good as I thought it was going to be. That's the first sequence with Claude, where he first unwraps the things, and the first reveal of him being the Invisible Man in the tavern, when they want to kick him out, and then they bring the police officer upstairs, and that whole sequence, like, you want to know what I am, I'm going to show you what I am, like, where he finally flips lid.
You're crazy to know who I am, aren't you? All right, I'll show you. I'll show you who I am and what I am.
That scene is amazing. And like, the whole reason I gave it the rating I did was probably solely because of that scene. Like, that scene was awesome. Then the rest of the movie, he lost me with the comedic part of it, because the way he's laughing, pulling the pranks, I'm like, you're invisible. You're going mad. He's a little darker in the book. You know what I mean? Like, he's much more maniacal evil in the book than what we got on film. As you see is done in later film version. We were talking about Hollow Man earlier. While I love Paul Verhoeven, I love that movie, I hate the amount of sexual content in it, which is why I usually don't watch that movie. They portrayed the character of how it should be. I know it's Dr. Kane, it's quite different than Invisible Man, but it's a retelling, or the new Invisible Man. He is a psychopath, and not so much a comedic person. So coming from that, I didn't like that part of the film. That bothered me, because I can see Dracula with my eyes. I can see Frankenstein with my eyes. I can see the Wolfman coming. You can't see the Invisible Man coming. You know what I mean? And there's so many moments that should be sheer terror that it's more laughable. And that was my problem with the movie. The other two things, of course, I like. One, Dwight Fry. Anytime he pops on the screen, I love it. I freaking love Dwight. But other than that, was what I wanted the whole movie, I didn't get until Kemp's death. And that's when they plot that whole thing. They're like, we're going to sneak you into the police department, so he'll see you come in, but then we're going to sneak you out the back. You'll change clothes and dress as a police officer, and then we'll sneak you out the back. And they got it to a T. You know what I mean? They got little bits of dirt all around the wall around the police office or police station, so that they can see if he's there. They got these spray paint guns to catch him. They're like, they've dotted every I, crossed every T. Still not smart enough to outsmart Dr. Griffin, because in the book, he is a freaking genius, and for the most part, there's parts here where you realize his how genius he is, but not so much. Like, that's one of the things about Hollow Man. Like, no matter how much you hated Kevin Bacon as Dr. Kane, his level of genius, he makes a comment in that movie about, not expecting anything better from everybody else, because everyone else in that room is the best in their class. They're working for the government, but they all know they're not as intelligent as Sebastian Kane. And that's how Dr. Griffin is. So they dot every I, cross every T, they still don't do it. he gets in the car and is with Kemp the entire time, all the way back to his house, doesn't say a word. And then Kemp looks at his clock, like
10.
Waits for 10. And then all of a sudden, there he is. I told you. You know what I mean? Like, and scares the crap out of Kemp, and then makes Kemp ties Kemp up and then drives him. And what's a great scene? He actually chokes Kemp out, pulling him out of the car, which looked amazing. Again, the special effects are phenomenal.
Yeah.
Because I mean, he's pulling him by his throat, by the scarf or whatever, and it looks awesome on scene. Ties him up, throws him back, excuse me, and then drives him up the hill and says, "This is what's going to happen. I'm going to take off the parking brake. You're going to roll down. You'll probably hit a boulder, break a few legs, break your neck. This is how you're going to die. Goodbye, Kemp." Oh my gosh, how terrifying. You know what I mean? Like, that was it. But you only get that 2-3 minutes of the film. So that was my big issue with this movie. Special effects was great, but I mean, like, you've got the Invisible Man, who should be, yes, is not a monster, so to speak, as Dracula or Frankenstein, but it should be equally as terrifying, if not more terrifying, because he's like the shark from Jaws. You don't know where he's at until all of a sudden he's there. You know, and so that was my biggest beef with this movie, was I felt it was extremely underutilized. It was just H.G. Wells handed it to Universal on a silver platter. I mean, they already did, you know.
Yeah.
And like you, Ruben, I read all these books as a kid because when I was a kid, Greatest Illustrated Classics had just came out, and they were reprinting all of H.G. Wells' stuff, all of Jules Verne's stuff. You know, so I was picking up, you know, from the library, you know, The Invisible Man, War of the Worlds, Mysterious Island, you know, Journey to the Center of the Earth. So I mean, I'd read it and loved it, and it was a scary book, you know, amongst the Greatest Illustrated Classics. You know what I mean? Of all those books that I remember reading, The Invisible Man was the one that would make me, when I got done and it was time to go to bed, let me open my closet door, you know, just to make sure. War of the Worlds didn't do that, you know what I mean? So that was, you know, my beef with the film.
Disappointment. That was your disappointment.
It was a big disappointment for me. Now they rectified that in the new Invisible Man. I mean, knocked it out of the park. But that's neither here nor there. We're talking about the original Universal Monster one. So, I mean, the special effects were outstanding. Claude Raines had those two scenes for me, man. The first madness, the madman scene where he reveals himself or takes off the bandages and just lose it. I'll show you what I am. Like, that scene may be one of the best acted scenes of all the Universal Monster films, in my opinion. And then the death of Kemp. But unfortunately, that 5 minutes of film time just was not enough to save the rest of the hour and 20 minutes that it was.
There was, it's an hour and 11 minutes.
Yeah. So, I mean, it just, you know, and then like they took a lot of flora out that versus what was in the book. And so while Gloria's a great actress, she just didn't capture me.
Yeah. She didn't have enough time.
Yeah, I mean, to really, you know, like when you first see her and she's asking about him, and then Kemp all of a sudden out of nowhere is like, "Let me tell you how I feel." Like, I was so detached from that scene, and she's crying, and I'm just like, just put a sock in it, lady. Like, come on. I couldn't get into the characters, you know, and Kemp was barely enough for me. Like, I didn't really care that he died, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
But for most of the actors, that probably was my problem, though. For me is even Henry Travers as Dr. Cranley. He's great in It's a Wonderful Life. He annoys me in this movie. Like, as Dr. Cranley, he just really kind of annoys me.
He has no life to him.
None.
Yeah.
He's very robotic. Yeah. And for a scientist who's supposed to be leading his field, he kind of seems kind of dumb. And so that really drove me nuts. You know, my favorite characters was Claude Raines, and I don't know the name of the officer, okay, but he's like the bigger guy with a little beard, and he's like, "Why don't we do this?" Like, he's like, they're spray painting that screen, and he pokes his head around. He's like, "Why don't we do this?" And the cop's like, "Oh, we're going to do blah blah." He's like, "Okay, yeah, that works." Yeah, I mean,
that works.
You know, when the cat crawls across the wall, he's the one that he paints the cat. That's the cop. Like, he was one of the best ones in the movie. You know, like, I loved seeing him. I felt like he could have been like the fourth Three Stooges. You know,
there you go. Yeah,
he was good. But for being a Universal Monster movie, man, it was the weakest because, I mean, it lacked the terror when the terror was literally handed to him on a silver platter. Like, that was my problem with this.
Do you think maybe that had to do with what Mark alluded to? Since it was in the Depression, they didn't want to do anything. they wanted to
make it
keep
any
it
more
upbeat.
depressing than
that may have been
upbeat.
because that was a rough time period you come through. But then again, you're going through the Great Depression. We're coming out of things and dealing with it, and you're getting King Kong
You got the
eating
Black Cat.
villagers.
Yeah, King Kong.
The Black Cat. That is so that may be the darkest movie of that age. I think the Black Cat, and it is
that was made in 34. So
so
that, we're.
I don't know. That may be why they streamlined and lightened it up. You know what I mean? And of course now I know H.G. Wells had to sign off on the script, so maybe H.G. had a little bit to do with it. I don't know. I wouldn't imagine H.G. would want to be like, to take this part of my book out. You know what I mean? Yeah. But for some reason they did. They went really light on this. And I think that, to me, while it's still a good movie, it's definitely worth watching. Just alone to see the two scenes I was talking about with Claude Raines and that cop is worth checking the movie out, because the first scene with Claude, I think, is just historic. It's a historic scene.
So what Sludge wants is Rob Zombie to do the Invisible Man.
Yes.
That's what he wants.
No, that's man, I'm totally cool with I can't even think of the guy who did the new one. You know what I mean? Like,
I haven't watched it yet.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah, neither have I. Yeah.
Really?
It's on the Plex. I saw it on
See,
there.
now you guys go and watch that one, you'll be like, dude, Sludge, you were right. Like, even my wife, like, she doesn't, the Universal horror stuff. She's like, okay, whatever. She'll get into not the old ones. She never cared for the Invisible Man. She hasn't even seen the original one. She thought that was just a stupid idea of a movie. I watched the new one and said, you're going to have to watch it. And at first she was like, no, I'm not watching it. Then I showed her the trailer. She watched it and she's like, that's one of the best films I've ever seen in my life. Like, it terrified her. So, you didn't need anybody different. Whoever did, I can't remember the director's name who did the new one. Phenomenal. But they knew, we've got terror on the silver platter, and they ran with it. Man. Go back and watch that movie, and when the main character is in the restaurant with her sister, okay, asking for help, that scene right there alone destroys every scene in the original Invisible Man. It was unreal. So, anyways, we're not reviewing that one.
Oh, yeah, that's what I was getting ready to say.
But
watch the original.
Watch the original. Anyway, so that's all I got to say about this one. Still, it's definitely worth the watch. I would put it last of the watch order for the Universal Monsters. I think we all agree on that. Yes. There are a couple great scenes. The special effects truly are. We all three told you. Special effects were top notch. Still are top notch. Go back and watch it because I've got the Blu-ray version on the Plex. Ruben, you got the Legacy Blu-ray, right?
Yeah.
So we watched this on like as high definition as possible, and it still looks great. Up. Oh, it does. Yeah. We're talking about the black velvet scenes on there. Well, the scene that I was referencing to, the first scene where he, I'll show you what I am scene, as he's unwrapping, that was one of the few scenes that they didn't use the velvet screen. Claude's head is under the collar of the shirt, and you can kind of notice with the way his hands are moving that it's kind of above his head. So they had built a wire frame for Claude's head, and then they put it above Claude's head and wrapped it in all the the gauze and the hair. And so when he's pulling off of this wire frame, and you can't see the wire frame. Like when it finally fully comes off, it's not there.
Oh yeah.
So the special effects are just top notch. The book's flying, the cup stuff when he pours the ink on the cop. Everything. The special effects are really good. Even him walking through the snow, like the footprints you see, and the body falling in the snow.
Well, the only thing I had with the walking through the snow is he had shoes on.
With that is true.
Because I thought he was, I didn't see no toes. I saw the shape of a shoe.
Yeah, clearly a shoe foot shape. Yeah. Well, all right. I think it's time. You guys ready?
Yeah.
It's Stompdown rating time. All right. Now Mark was a little more generous than we were, but overall, this one got a 2 out of 5. Yes. 2 out of 5. Yes. So,
and I'll proudly say I gave a 3. And
you did.
And I almost wanted to change it to a 3.5 after Ruben got done there. Ruben had me pumped up.
I'm
like, yes.
And by the time Ruben got done, I was like, oh, are we sure we did Ruben's rating right? Because me and Ruben gave it a 2.
Yeah.
But you know how I rate. You know exactly how I rate. I compare it to Frankenstein. You put Dracula and Frankenstein in front of it. What movie has a shot?
Yeah.
You know, it's
Right.
going to be tough. Yeah.
Yeah.
What movie has a shot at getting a, you know, it's, you guys know how I try to be as subjective as possible, because I really think highly of the movie. I just don't think it's a universal monster, which it got penalized for that. And it got penalized because it came after The Mummy, Dracula, and Frankenstein.
That's
three
true.
stellar movies on the Universal monster.
I think highly of Claude Raines and 2 scenes of this movie, and Dwight Fry.
I just don't think. You know, one of the big things is I don't think Karloff may have been able to pull it off as good as Claude Raines.
I think the madman aspect he wouldn't have.
Yeah, I think you should. You'd have you'd be better at it, Fry.
Oh my God! Yeah. Fry would have been perfect. They had the right guy in the movie the whole time. You know,
he just did a cameo.
You wasted it. You know. And Fry was darker. I mean, as Fritz, you know, the abuse he did to the monster, as Renfield killing. I mean, you had the wrong guy underneath the hood there.
They got the wrong guy. As good as Claude Raines is,
Fry would have been awesome. Yes.
Just imagine that.
I'll not be able to sleep tonight now thinking of because Dwight Fry being the Invisible Man. That would have been superb, man. Would have been so good. I think Karloff would have made the character much darker. Like, he would have definitely emphasized the evil side of and the terroristic side of the Invisible Man. But I don't think he would have captured the psychotic part like Claude did.
Well, and can you picture Karloff as a intelligent scientist?
Nope.
Yeah. Nope. You see, there's another thing.
Yeah, that's another issue. I mean, they're not.
And no offense to, I'm not knocking on his acting, or I'm just saying when you see Karloff, you don't see Thomas Edison.
No. I mean, I see the dude you should be fed, the monster in the closet, the monster that's 2 houses down. You know what I mean? Like, that's, I mean, when you go back and you watch, I mean, you know, Frankenstein, or especially the Black Cat, man, even though Black Cat's not a monster movie, we may have to do that movie because it is so freaking
Well, we just
good.
did The Invisible Man.
Yeah.
So,
Well, I mean, that's true. That's true. But like, I mean, seeing Karloff in the Black Cat, you're just like, dude, you're terrifying. You are a terrifying human being. So I mean, I'm with you there. I couldn't see him pulling off the scientist role. That would be needed for this.
Yeah. So that's just, that's just what I think. My opinion. Okay.
So, all right. You guys got anything else on this one?
Nope. I'm good.
No, I'm good.
All right. Well, guys, even though we gave it a 2, it's still worth watching. See it at least once.
I gave it a 3.
Mark gave it overall. The show gave it 2.
And I almost talked him into 3.5.
Oh yes,
almost.
Definitely.
Definitely worth checking out. You know, what I mean, make sure you see the other Universal monsters first, but then check this out. But I mean, hey, you may watch it and you may absolutely love this movie. I mean, to each his own. I mean, Justin loves Godzilla 98 over Shin Godzilla somehow. But so to each their own on it. But
I had your back on that, Justin.
he appreciated that. He showed the love online.
So
anyways, good movie. That wraps us up for the Universal Monsters. We may jump back to the Universal Monsters as far as the sequels or the remakes at some point, because you guys gave us a lot of great feedback on these films, and we really appreciate that a lot. But man, coming up next, the next episode, the first episode of next month, is one of the most pumped up, excited episodes. I mean, Ruben has messaged me daily about the animated Godzilla trilogy that we got to do, and so I cannot wait to hear what he's got to do.
I bet he's watched them 3 or 4 times.
I'm sure, man.
That's what I'm saying. I'm at work, and you know what? I'm forget work. I'm gonna watch.
Yeah, he's so ready for it. I mean, but we are going to be doing all 3 films back to back in one episode.
But I will say that first one had me. The first of the 3 of the trilogy, that's what's saving the whole franchise from me flushing it down the toilet.
That might get it a 1.
Oh man, might be surprised which one's my favorite of the 3. So,
but you know what? I'm gonna rewatch it. I might have an epiphany. Who knows?
We'll see. So I'm kind of excited about it. I like the fresh take, and there's a lot of things I didn't like, but we'll get to it. You know what I mean? We'll talk about the animated trilogy. We'll try not to make it super long for you guys. We'll try to bust through the 3 films since it's one congruent storyline anyways, as quick as we can. But we got to knock those 3 out so that we can jump on to the next one, and that's Godzilla King of the Monsters. And that one I really can't wait to do. I'm stoked with that one. That's October, because after the Godzilla anime trilogy, we have, again, we've talked about it, a special episode coming up next month where we are teaming up with Charlie and Dan from Give Me Back My Action Movies for a very cool, very sweet episode for you. We've dropped one flyer. Not going to announce the movie yet. We will announce it on the next episode, just in case there's a few people out there who have no idea, which there is. I actually showed the poster to my wife, and I was like, hey, here's the poster. Do you get the hint? Do you know what movie we're doing? She's like, I have no idea. I was like, you got to be like one of the only person that has no idea yet. But it's going to be a super fun episode. We're super stoked about it. And then, of course, after that, starting October, we'll hit Godzilla King of the Monsters. So pretty stoked. So
sounds like a winner.
Awesome. Well, man, we'll see you all in just a couple weeks with the awesome Godzilla anime trilogy. So pumped for that one. Yes. So this is Sludge.
And Mark.
You got Ruben.
Y'all have a good night.
Good night.
Night.
Come on, you think you want to live forever? Now what?
But no matter what happens, Godzilla will
Well, I didn't get to see her for her birthday, so I gave her 60 for her birthday.
That's I guess that's my bad. My bad, man.
Yeah.
But what are you talking about? You skated on me and Gavin's birthday,
Yeah, I did.
Yeah, exactly.
No remorse in his face.
None whatsoever. Oh, yeah.
Yeah, it did. So what?
Yeah.
What you gonna do about it?
We know who the favorite one is. It is definitely Data.